The wall was hollow. Behind it, a secret door. 43 boxes. 8 years of evidence. The previous owner died 2 weeks later. Someone had been here recently. What was he hiding? The wall was hollow. That's the first thing that happened. Not a creaking floorboard. Not a flicker in the lights. A hollow sound when my knuckle knocked against the drywall in the basement, and every hair on my arm stood up like it already knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I'd owned the house for 11 days. Bought it fast, too fast, my sister had said. A foreclosure in a neighborhood that used to be something. Listed at a price that made me suspicious and then made me greedy. The previous owner hadn't left voluntarily. That much was in the public records. But banks don't explain things. Banks just sell. I was down there to fix a dripping pipe. That was all. That was supposed to be all. I knocked again. Same sound. The kind of sound that means air. The kind that means space. The kind that means there is something on the other side of this wall that nobody told you about. I pressed both palms against it. Felt the cold coming through. Not the cold of an exterior wall. Deeper than that. Still, like a held breath. I went upstairs and got a flashlight, a hammer, and whatever part of me still believed this would turn out to be nothing. It did not turn out to be nothing. The seam was hidden beneath a pegboard panel that the previous owner had mounted flush to the studs. Looked like tool storage. Looked like every basement wall in America. But the pegboard had no holes. No hooks. No tools hung there. Nothing. It was a pegboard installed purely to look like it belonged there. I pulled it free. Behind it, a door. Not a rough-cut access panel. Not a utility opening. An actual door, solid core, hinged professionally, with a knob that turned freely when I reached for it. Someone had built this. Someone had wanted to get in and out of this place without anyone knowing it existed. I opened the door. The room was roughly 10 by 12. Maybe bigger. Hard to tell in the dark. My flashlight swept the far wall and caught the glint of something metal, shelving units, industrial, the kind you see in warehouses. And on the shelves, boxes. Dozens of them. Bankers' boxes, taped shut, numbered in marker on the side. The numbers started at 1, and I counted across the shelf until I lost track somewhere around 40. I didn't open one. Not yet. What I did instead, what any sane person would do, was stand in the doorway and aim my flashlight at every corner before I took a single step inside. Because the door was solid. Because the room had no windows. Because I was alone in a house I'd owned for 11 days and nobody in the world knew I was standing here right now. Nothing in the corners. Just boxes. Just shelves. Just the smell of something dry and old. Paper, maybe. Or something that had been sealed up long enough to forget what outside air felt like. I stepped in. The floor was concrete. Painted gray, swept clean. No. Dust. That was the detail that stopped me. I'd had to wipe cobwebs off. The main basement light fixture. When I moved in, the mechanical room had a layer of grime on everything. But this floor had been swept. Recently. Or else something about this room kept the dust out. I didn't know which answer was better. I pulled a box off the shelf. Number 7. Shook it. Wait. Shifted inside. That dense, flat shift of papers stacked tight. I pulled the tape. Opened the lid. Documents. Files. Printed emails, hundreds of them. Clipped together in sets. Each set held together with a binder clip and labeled. With a name on a sticky note. The names meant nothing to me. A man named Gerald. A woman named Cynthia. An LLC called Meridian Cascade Holdings. I flipped through. The first set, emails between Gerald and someone whose name was redacted with a black marker on every single page. Discussions about payments. About properties. About what would happen if someone started asking questions. I put box 7 down and grabbed box 12. More files. More names I didn't recognize. But tucked inside the front flap, a photograph. Printed on copy paper. Not photo stock. Black and white. Grainy. 3 men standing. Outside a building I couldn't identify. One of them was circled in pen. Beneath the circle, written in the same handwriting as the box numbers, 2 words. He knows. I set the box down very carefully. The way you set things down when your hands have started to shake. Someone had been living with these documents. Had organized them. Had known enough about their contents to write he knows on a photograph and lock it behind a hidden door in the basement of a house that a bank then foreclosed on. I thought about the foreclosure. The timeline. I pulled my phone out and searched the previous owner's name, which I knew from the deed. Thomas Vickers. Bought. The house in 2009. Lost it in 2022. I'd bought it 6 weeks after the bank took it. The first search result was a local news article from October 2022. Thomas Vickers, 54, had been found dead in his car in the parking lot of a storage facility on the east side of the city. Medical examiner ruled it a heart attack. He had died 2 weeks before the bank filed the foreclosure papers. I read the article 3 times. Standing in a hidden room in a house where his things still were. I called my sister. She answered on the second ring. What's wrong with the house now? Nothing's wrong with the house. I kept my voice even. I just need you to know I'm here. Right now, in the basement. I need someone to know that. Silence. Then, what did you find? I don't know yet. That's not an answer. I know. She drove over. 20 minutes. I sat on the basement stairs and did not go back into the room and did not call anyone else and did not think too hard about the fact that the door had opened freely, no rust, no stiff hinges, no fight, because that detail meant the hinges had been oiled. And you don't oil the hinges on a door you plan to never open again. My sister's name is Rachel. She is 4 years older than me and she has the kind of face that does not perform emotions. When she walked down the basement stairs and I pointed at the open door and she looked inside, her expression did not change. She walked to the shelves. She picked up box 7, the one I'd already opened. She read for 3 minutes without saying anything. How many boxes are there? She finally said. I counted to 40 before I stopped. She set box 7 down. She turned to look at me. You need to call someone. Who? And that was the problem. That was the entire problem in one word. Because, who do you call when you find evidence that a dead man compiled in a hidden room in a foreclosed house? You call the police if you trust the police. You call a lawyer if you have one and if you trust them. You call a journalist if you want to hand this to someone whose job creates a target on their back. You call nobody if you want to pretend you never found any of this and tape the pegboard back up and sell the house as soon as the market allows. Rachel already knew I was going to open more boxes. She pulled up a stool from the corner. There was a stool in the corner, positioned as if someone had sat here for hours, and she sat down. And she said, then open them. We opened 43 boxes that night. By box 15, I had stopped being scared and started being something else. The word for it wasn't curiosity anymore. It was closer to grief. Because whatever Thomas Vickers had been doing in this room, he had been doing it for years. The earliest printed emails were dated 2014. The latest were October 2022. 1 week before he died. He'd been building a case. That was the only explanation that fit the evidence. The documents were organized by subject, by person, by transaction. There was a filing system. There were handwritten notes in the margins of the emails, not random observations, but the notes of someone who understood what they were reading and was cross-referencing it against other things they'd already read. Some pages had references written in the corner, see box 22, or cross-check against Meridian. 2017. This was the work of someone methodical, someone patient, someone who had decided that the safest place for evidence was not a flash drive or a cloud account or a filing cabinet in an office. The safest place was a hidden room in a private home, because devices get subpoenaed, offices get searched, but nobody searches a room that nobody knows exists. Except the market collapses and you lose the house and you die in a parking lot, and the bank sells your hidden room to a stranger who was just trying to fix a pipe. Box 31 had a different feel the moment I lifted it. Heavier. I opened it and found documents, but also, beneath them, wrapped in a freezer bag, a USB drive. Old model. The thick kind from a decade ago. Labeled with one word in marker. Insurance. I held it for a long time. Rachel was reading something across the room. Without looking up, she said, "Don't plug that in here." I know. Don't plug it in at home either. I know. Get a new laptop. Cash. Never been connected to your name. I looked at my sister. You've thought about this before. I've read enough. She finally set her pages down. This isn't small, whatever this is. These names in here, some of these are public. Real estate developers. A county commissioner, I think. And whatever they were doing, Thomas Vickers knew about it long enough to fill 43 boxes. And then he died. And then he died. We left everything exactly as we'd found it. We closed the boxes. We closed the door. We pulled the pegboard back into place. We went upstairs and sat at my kitchen table and drank coffee that I made badly because my hands weren't cooperating, and we did not talk for a while. Then Rachel said, "He could have given this to someone before he lost the house. Maybe he tried. Or maybe he ran out of time. Or maybe, I thought, and did not say, he knew that giving it to someone was the part that got you killed. Maybe he understood that the safest position was to have the evidence and to make certain the people who wanted it gone knew you had it. Known insurance. A deterrent. And then the house got pulled out from under him and the deterrent disappeared, and 2 weeks later, he was in a parking lot. I did not sleep that night. In the morning, I called a lawyer. Not the one who'd handled my closing, someone new. Someone I found by asking a friend who had nothing to do with real estate or local government or anything that appeared in any of those boxes. I described what I'd found in the most general terms possible. The lawyer asked 3 questions. Then she said, "Don't touch anything. Don't talk to anyone else. Come in this afternoon." Her name was Ellen Park. She was 60 years old and had the energy of someone who had stopped being surprised by human beings about 20 years ago. I sat across from her desk and I told her everything. She did not react the way Rachel had. She did not react the way I had. She picked up a pen and started writing on a legal pad and said, "Tell me the names you remember." I told her. When I said the county commissioner's name, her pen stopped moving. "Say that again," she said. I said it again. I said it again. She set her pen down. She looked at me with an expression that I would spend a long time trying to read afterward. Something between calculation and something that might have been fear, except that it settled too quickly for fear. More like recognition. "I need you to understand something," she said. "What you're describing, if it is what it sounds like, is not a local matter. This isn't a zoning dispute. This isn't a contractor cutting corners. The name you just said has connections that go higher than this county." "How much higher?" "High enough that the decision you make in the next 72 hours will matter for a long time." I thought about Thomas Vickers, his stool in the corner of his hidden room, the oiled hinges on his door, the 8 years he'd spent building something that nobody was supposed to find until he was ready. "He wasn't ready," I said. "He ran out of time." "Maybe," Ellen said. "Or maybe he made a choice about when to be ready that he never got to follow through on. Is there a difference?" She looked at me steadily. "There is if you're the one making the choice now." I went home. I sat in my kitchen in my house that I'd bought fast, too fast, because the price was good and I'd needed a win, and I tried to understand what exactly had been handed to me. Not a discovery, not a mystery solved, a responsibility, unasked for, unearned, just there, the way a storm is just there when you step outside and the sky has already turned the wrong color. Thomas Vickers had not put those boxes there for me. He hadn't known I existed, but he'd built the room with a door that opened easily, with a stool for sitting, with an organization system that a stranger could follow, as if, somewhere in the back of his mind, he had understood that someday someone else might find this and need to understand it fast. Maybe that was generosity. Maybe that was desperation. Maybe it was both. I went back to the basement that night alone. I opened the door. I pulled the stool to the center of the room, and I sat where he had sat, and I looked at the rows of boxes, and I tried to understand what kind of person spends 8 years on something like this. What kind of person has that much patience, that much conviction, that much fear? What kind of person keeps going when keeping going puts them in a parking lot? My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Decision made?" I typed back. "Working on it." She sent 3 dots. Then, "Whatever you decide, I'm in." I set the phone down and looked at the USB drive I was still holding in my left hand. Here is the part where I have to tell you something honest. I am not brave. I have never done anything that required courage in the way that word actually means. I bought a house because I needed a win and the price was good. That is the level at which I have been operating my entire life. Practical, cautious, slightly cowardly in the ways that never quite show. And Thomas Vickers was dead, and the door had opened easily, and the stool was in the corner like an invitation. And I had not given the USB drive to Ellen Park. I was still holding it. And sitting in that room, his work, his years, I started to understand that the question was not whether to do something. The question was whether I was the kind of person who does something when it falls into their lap uninvited, or the kind of person who tapes the pegboard back into place and lists the house in the spring. Both are choices. Both have consequences. Both are the kind of thing you live with. So let me ask you something. Not about me. Not about Thomas Vickers. About you. If you found those boxes, 43 of them, 8 years of someone's life, evidence that cost a man everything he had, including eventually his life, and you had the USB drive in your hand, and a lawyer who looked at you like the clock was already running, what would you do? Not what you want to say you would do. What you would actually do at 2 in the morning alone in a hidden room in a house you bought because the price was good. Because the distance between those two answers is where most of us actually live. And Thomas Vickers didn't have the luxury of knowing where he lived until it was already too late.